Hey, good morning. Thank you for joining us. We are RIA Advisors. I'm Danny Ratliff here with Richard Rosso. Another candid coffee in the books, looks like. So today we're going to talk about something that I know that is near and dear to many, but is extremely difficult to deal with. So we're going to talk a little bit about progression planning. And really what this is just Rich's fancy way of saying, how do we start preparing for end of life and making those plans? And so we're going to talk quite a bit about this, give you guys some tips, some things to maybe smooth things over, and then obviously answer your questions. We do try to keep these right at an hour. If you do have any questions throughout this presentation, please don't hesitate to ask in the Q&A on Zoom. And one little bit of housekeeping, we are Clarity Financial, doing business as RIA Advisors. We are a registered investment advisor, a fiduciary registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Please don't take any of these as gospel. This is just information. So do consult with an attorney. We are not attorneys. We are certified financial planners and look to just give you a lot of anecdotal evidence and some evidence that we see in day-to-day practice. So Rich, let's jump right in. What are we going to cover today?
Yeah, so I don't mean to trick everybody with progression planning wordplay, but I really thought about what this is, and it's really a reflection. This process is a reflection on a life well lived, right? So you're going to have steps to prepare emotionally, then you're going to have financial and family actions, and this is going to mark a legacy for you. Now is your time to mark your legacy. Communication, clarity, and harmony among your family. Believe it or not, you are the linchpin for that. So we're going to cover the emotional hurdles, right? It's tough to believe we're going to die someday. So there's a change of perspective. Some of this comes from, ironically, I read a lot of Ryan Holiday's books. He writes about the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, all these different incredible people that lived in Greece, and they were philosophers, and his books are great. So I took some of this from Marcus Aurelius. So as far as the theme, not the ideas, it's they embraced death, the Stoics, and that changed their perspective of how they lived their current life and how they prepared. And then the communication ideas, right? Dead documents don't talk. I like to say that yet they miscommunicate. So you don't want your estate to talk to the documents. And then there's the soul searching behind the estate planning documents. And then, of course, we've got some really cool, great resources and steps for you to take when it comes to the process.
So we're going to jump in steps to address. So focus on life and legacy, not death. What do you want your heirs to remember about you? And I think this is a big point because, Rich, you and I talk about this frequently where, somebody passes, and so many times the last thing people remember is the strife, the fighting, that the heirs go through because there weren't plans that were well made, or the stress emotionally about having to make decisions along the way for a loved one. I think that's a really difficult aspect of it. And so focus on what that intent is long term. I mean, I know I don't want my last thoughts of a loved one to be, oh man, can you believe all the stuff we had to go through to get this done, or the decisions that had to be made. You can make life a lot easier by going ahead and addressing these things. So gathering points of view, I think, is extremely important, and having those open communication and the conversations. We talk about this often, where the most successful families, just in general financially, communicate extremely well. And I think this is another big aspect of this. Nobody wants to talk about this, kind of like life insurance. Hey, we all think or hope we're going to live forever until we don't. So speak with families, speak openly, and then gain feedback from them. You may think that your kids really want something, or you want them to have something. They may be like, Mom, Dad, I really don't want this. And Rich, you've seen this quite a bit. I mean, you have some good experience with that too.
Yeah. So we're going to go through all these 4 steps and make sure you understand. But the most important one is that step 1. Because without step 1, you sort of, you lose the ability to go further. So you got to reframe your internal conversations, right? Listen, you got plenty of life to live, but you're preparing for the inevitable. And that's a gift. That's a gift to your family. It's a gift to your loved ones, right? You want to reflect on how those you leave behind, you know, it's like use your imagination. Your mind's great, incredible, darn tool for creativity. And think about, and I can't remember if it was Stephen Covey who did this, but he said, think about you're sitting on at the first row in your funeral. What are people saying about you? I think he wrote that in one of his books. So you got to really look at focusing on what your remembrance is going to be, not scramble to make end of life decisions, and focusing on life. See, you're not focusing on death. You're focusing on life and the legacy. And you feel good about making these plans. And I will tell you what happens is once you start making these plans and reshift your focus, you start to live your life a little fuller because you know you only have so much time. I don't care if you're 20 or you're 60. Life goes by so fast. So you have to keep in mind that this gives you a perspective on yourself and things you could do better, right? They always talk about, hey, what would you do if you had one day left to live, right? And, you know, this is sort of that reset. So, you know, you got to reframe this internal conversation. And we talk to so many people that go, I don't want to do it. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, nothing's going to happen until you reframe those internal conversations and then share those ideas, share those concerns, speak aloud, talk to yourself, whatever. Talk to the guy at the donut shop, whatever it is. Just saying is, you want to shine light on this topic. You want to bring in your special people in your life to share their experiences. Ask them, ask your friends, what have you done? What do you think? Words are sunlight. They open your views to acceptance because you talk to a friend and then yeah, I did this or I did that. You know, don't be afraid to talk about it. It's not like this dark shadow in the room. We can't talk about it. Talk about it. And the more you talk about something, the more light you bring upon it, the more it becomes part of your everyday. And do that. Then you want to go and speak with your family. Explain to children, especially how you're working on your end of life plans, and look to share them. Do not, and this is where Danny and I see this issue all the time. You don't let the dead documents speak for you. They're cold legal validation of your sentiments. But those sentiments have to be shared warmly by you, especially if there could be decisions in there that you know is going to cause friction. I know people, Danny, that will put together plans and almost relish the fact. Wait till they read this. Whoa.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No. Wait till they see who got that. Boy, and I won't even be here for the arguments. I mean, that's terrible attitude. I mean, you can do what you want, but I think that's a terrible legacy to leave behind. So
no, I agree. I think that so often that those documents they're never addressed, and that's a big problem when the communication aspect. And so we'll give you some ideas in a minute on how you can kind of broach that and some topics with that. But yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, and then use questions. Questions are good. Remember Columbo? Columbo was great. Ask questions. One more thing. I got this question. Does your daughter want the china? Do your kids want the house? Most likely not. Are there treasures you want to gift now? Who would be the executor of your will? What about your pets? What I hate seeing is on social media and on Nextdoor is this woman's family's got the dog. The dog's 18. Mom passed away. We don't want the dog. Terrible, 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 terrible. Think about the pets too. And think about this. Gather feedback, ask questions, but nothing starts. None of those steps start without the first step. And that's reframing how you feel about this and the internal conversation you're going to have. Nothing moves ahead without it. I am having a problem right now with someone close to me and her mom. Her mom does not want to talk about it. No, I don't want to talk about it. And they have siblings that sort of not get along. So I can already see the issues that mom is laying out for them. So you got to start with step one.
Yeah, absolutely. So, communication ideas here, I think that these are always, how do you broach the topic? What do you do? I think having that dinner celebration, considering getting together, have that discussion or just bring it up. These are things I think we think too far ahead or think too far or think, just too much about it. We should just be able to have this conversation. Unfortunately, many families don't, but you can even bring this up around, Thanksgiving, Christmas, I know most people, I mean, you've heard people who've done that, Rich, and they're like, the kid's like, whoa, 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 we're not going to talk about this here. But when? So you're either going to have to set aside some time to specifically do this, or you're going to have to find something when everybody's together. And unfortunately, sometimes it may be around those holiday seasons, but to broach this and have this conversation is really important. But then, you know, you have to gather a team as well, you know, who's on your team. And it, you know, obviously, you know, you want an estate attorney, typically somebody that's certified in estate planning. You know, maybe it's your financial advisor. We have a lot of discussions with our clients, attorneys and CPAs on a regular basis. So that would be something that, you know, you could reach out if you work with us. We're always happy to help facilitate that, have those conversations, and just be another sounding board for you. I think that's really important, to have more people who understand what your vision is, what you're looking to accomplish, the better. And then a facilitator. Now, Rich, you've served as a facilitator in the past, and you've seen some really good things come from that, where, you know, you can kind of be there where it takes a little bit of that emotion out of it, I think, to some extent.
It does.
And also you're able to say, well, hold on, guys, let's think about this. If somebody is, because look, it is very emotionally driven, but you can kind of be the mediator, so to speak, who can speak on behalf of, you know, the typically the older heir, and make sure that everybody understands their vision and what they're trying to accomplish and why. Because many times, you know, it's a contentious deal sometimes.
It is. No, it is. You brought up something about the holidays. The holidays, people are a little bit more open to conversations about legacy, right? You pull an ornament out of a box and you've owned it for 30 years, right? And it's pristine because you only bring it out once a year. I mean, there's something about, you don't have to do it at Christmas or Thanksgiving, like after you're eating turkey and pie, go, hey, everybody, I'm going to die. Let's talk about it, right? When, you know, but you're in the seasonal period of time, maybe Halloween a little weird. Maybe you want a seance or something, but you want to do, you're having a good part of the time of the year to do it. You could do it anytime. The team is also a financial advisor that helps spouses who are left behind, right, who maybe never really were involved in finances, help the other people understand the steps of the estate plan. Your fiduciary financial advisor is maybe not an attorney, but they do understand the basic concepts and what to do, and that's important. And the facilitator, like, again, also a third party. Yet, listen, the third party could be someone else in the family. You know, I've had brothers and sisters be facilitators, and that's worked out really well. So siblings have been pretty good that get along. It really works. And again, please don't forget Muffy. We'll talk a little bit about that. So having a third party, you know, and your estate planner is good too, but your estate planner is sort of like a document. Like, they're sort of cold and like, here's what's going to happen and blah, 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 blah. You know, you need someone that's going to like a quarterback, right? Is going to gather it all together and help you understand the big picture. The estate planner is great, and you need the board certified estate planner, but they're just going to be there to say the documents. They deal with this stuff all day. They're not as warm and fuzzy. You know, this is their job, right? So, and that makes sense. You want them to create the right documents. So these are the steps. But having a dinner celebration, having a gathering, anything that's warm and fuzzy that helps get everybody together is important.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about these documents, Rich. I mean, what are the basics? I mean, I think most people understand this, but you know, very important that these are updated and they're not just sitting there. You know, they're great to get them done, but things change. And so if you did this 20 years ago, I would think you'd probably want to make sure that these are updated. People that you had in there are still, you're still on good relations, good terms. They're still alive. Or, you know, maybe there's somebody better suited for it at this stage in life than, you know, people you had previously.
Right. You know, executors, right? Change, executors die, new people come in. I've had where I have, and like you probably do, clients who had young children, and those children are no longer, they're young, but they're very stable. They understand, and they've made one of their children an executor. And by the way, if you have 3 kids, 2 kids, and you make one an executor, you better explain to the other 2 why that one's got it. Don't, because there's a lot of animosity about that. Like, for me, if I were sitting there, I'd be like, oh, Bill's taking care of that. But they get offended. Why is Jim doing it over John? Well, Jim has, through his lifetime, shown an incredible financial commandment of his situation, right? He's very fiscally responsible. Other party, a little more reckless, spends a lot of money. Maybe I think this one is the best executor, right? And so you're really hitting the heart of some of your kids with this stuff. So you got to have that conversation, right? Beneficiary designation is pretty easy. Many people forget to update them, right, Danny? They get divorced, beneficiaries die. They don't update their beneficiary designations on life insurance, IRAs, 401ks, other retirement plans. And that's the easiest thing you can do. So look at those once a year. Make sure they're proper. I've had people that said, oh, I have a beneficiary on that account. They had no beneficiary. Or they list the estate, which is terrible because this is a non-probate asset and you're going to turn it into a probate asset. Unless you're doing some form of sophisticated estate planning, you got to make sure you've got those set up. And then the durable financial power of attorney, you could do it with the institution or not. But especially, we're going to see, Danny, a lot of single seniors, right? Look at household formation, look at marriage, look at how many children families are having, right? A lot of people are going to be alone. Who is going to sign a check for those people when they need it?
That's right. Somebody's going to have to do it if you're incapacitated.
Right. It's not like you even have another spouse to help you. And even so, if it's not a joint account, they're still going to need to be punished. Well, spouses go, I don't need to do it. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. What if you want to make decisions on your wife's IRA? So you can get a durable financial power of attorney done by the estate planner. I think what's easier is going direct to the institution and using their document and getting those done. But so you need to do both. So that's really important, right? We also talked about what if, again, we said incapacitated. You want this to be durable, which means your agent's authority continues if you become incapacitated, right? So obviously this is somebody you trust very much so with your money and making those decisions for you. And then a pet trust. You can do that. You can even talk to, I've had one client that's got 3 dogs and they talked to a local, little small, great little organization. They rehome dachshunds. And she's got the cutest little dachshunds. I said, I'd take one. Don't die, but I'd take one. And she talked to them and they said, listen, my kids don't want the dogs. See, she's had the conversation. Nobody I know wants my dogs, and I can't think of having my dogs in a shelter. Thus, can you rehome them? And I will place in my will X amount of dollars as a donation and to help that process. Beautiful. Beautiful. So that's someone who's thinking ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Who wants those dogs when you're gone? It may not be what you think.
You make an assumption that somebody wants your cat, your dog, whatever animals you have, and your family sometimes doesn't want that. So you got to really, again, it comes from the conversation. Durable medical power of attorneys. I had to make these decisions for my parents. They had none of this stuff. I think I knew what they wanted, especially with do not resuscitate. But that, I was thought about, why should I have to be the one to make this decision? I'm okay to make it. But there's some children that might feel like, why do I have to do this? So why do I have to make these medical decisions? So the medical power attorney, you choose someone to make those for you that you can't make for yourself, treatment options, surgery, that's your healthcare proxy. And then you have a living will. It's not the same as a will, but it outlines your healthcare preferences in the event you can't communicate. You can't state right? So if you have a living will and a medical POA, these documents really work well together and they align to your wishes. And they're sometimes called, we call these advanced healthcare directives when these two work together. Life insurance, Danny, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that. We work with a lot of clients who don't no longer need life insurance. But how many times do you go on Facebook or another social media site and there's a beautiful picture of a young family And it says, well, Bill got killed in a skiing accident and we have no life insurance. Please donate. And I'm like, my gosh, how do you have young
Yeah.
children and not have life insurance? Right?
Yeah. So hey, real quick, let's step back on those advanced medical directives.
Sure, go ahead.
How old were you when you had to make those decisions?
29.
Yeah. What were you really ready? I mean, honestly. I mean, think about the burden that puts on most people, and then you can
I
always question decisions you made. I mean, things like that.
I
That's so difficult. So
yeah, most people, I was ready because I knew I knew based on my parents' habits, this is how they'd end up.
yeah,
Yes, it was just how they lived, right? I knew they would die young. It just, there was no way that they weren't. So, but yes, I sort of felt like, why should I have to do it? Um, so yeah, I don't think that's a burden you place on anybody. Whether they're 29 or 59. So yeah, I agree. I wasn't fully ready. I didn't really want to make those decisions, but I just had to. I had no choice.
yeah. And what I'm getting at here is that these are decisions that
Yes.
your loved one's going to have to live with if it doesn't go the way that you hope, or if things change. And
But
that's
they
just tough, right? If
question,
you have to make an end of
yeah,
life decision, that's so difficult.
yeah, they question
Um,
themselves, right? Did I make the right decision? You don't want your loved ones to battle in their head whether or not they did the right thing. Would mom really have wanted that? I think so. So why do
yeah.
that? You're alive.
Or you have family members that question you, and then they have resentment and they have
Right.
problems with it, and
Good point.
that some of those things are tough to overcome. And so don't create that problem for your loved ones, because most people, I think, have a pretty good idea, and some people may not. And I know it's very difficult because well, I don't know what I'd want to do. I don't know how long I'd want to be on life support. I don't know if I'd want to go through some of these things, and I get it. But you need to have some type of outline laid out so that you don't create this additional stress and drama on your loved ones.
And Danny, we talk in Texas about the walk in the woods one.
Yeah, yeah.
Two people walk into the woods and only one's going to walk out. Just leave me there. I can't even times you got it, but I got it too. If I'm
Yep.
going to
Oh,
die,
yeah.
I'm just going to go off into the woods. I'm like, where are these woods? Where are you going? Everything around here, there are no woods. I like woods, but where are you going? But I agree with you. Yeah, you need that. Life insurance is very important. And some people will have life insurance because their other assets might be tied up in probate. So even if they're older, they may have a little bit of life insurance. We have clients that will they'll say, listen, Rich, I got this $50,000 policy. I don't really need life insurance. And I'm like, listen, it gets the money to the family real fast for things they may need. And it's not really costing much. So what's the big deal? Or I have clients that will set an account aside, just a checking account or a liquid account, and they'll have children as transfer on death or full power of attorney, and that's good too. But younger people with younger children, there's no discussion
You
about
need
this
it.
life insurance. I have younger families that'll like argue with me about it. And I'm like, you can't argue with me about it on life insurance. You have kids that are 5 and 8. There's nothing else I'm going to tell you. You have to. And you know what else? In these documents, how many young parents do you find have not yet listed a guardian?
Oh man, I mean,
Because they
so many times.
can't get it together.
Yeah, or have just not addressed this. So, speaking to the life insurance, I think there's a couple things that need to be noted. Number one, if you are younger, and really even if you're a little bit older than, having young children, you typically, if you're still working, want some type of life insurance. And generally speaking, we want something above and beyond what you have from your employer, because not always is that portable. Meaning that if you leave that job, you can't always take it with you. So if that's the main type of life insurance that you have, you need to make sure that it is portable. Call your HR benefits group and get a good understanding. If you leave, if you got fired tomorrow, can you take that policy with you? And those are really nice because you don't have to typically go under. If you keep a certain amount, you don't have to show evidence of insurability. They're not doing underwriting unless you get a very large amount. But typically we want something above and beyond that. And usually we use term life insurance for that. We're talking about strictly mitigating risk. A policy is generally rather cheap, especially while you're younger, and it's something that you can do to help protect your day-to-day activity of your family. If you know, the wife or the husband passes, what impact does that have monetarily? Do they continue their lifestyle? Can you put kids through college? You know, and there's a lot of ways to back into this. And so there's no set one rule of thumb, but I think you need to understand, you know, what are your expenses? What do those look like? And, you know, sometimes I see this where one spouse stays home. And they say, well, we don't need life insurance on that spouse that stays home because they're not bringing in income. I think that is a huge mistake as well.
That's very common, though. You think about what would it cost you to have like if your stay-at-home spouse passed away, the value of that job, taking care of your children, and you're not going to insure that, you're, like you said, that's very common, and that doesn't make sense. And then when you speak to them, they go, oh yeah. That they had a study once, like they use stay-at-home moms, but like what would you have to pay somebody to do what mom does?
Oh, it was like $150,000. It was through the roof.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I can't show my wife that
no,
study.
don't.
She'll ask for a raise.
Yeah.
But this is so important, and be cautious here, because a lot of life insurance salesmen will say, well, you need this permanent policy and here's why. Well, I can make some pretty good arguments on, you know, permanent policies are good, but for these purposes, I think term fits the bill much better. You're going to be able to attain a lot more. It's going to be cheaper for you, and you're not going to need it forever. And so think about your current age, when the kids are out of the home or off the payroll, so to speak. If you think you're going to work till 65 and you're 50 years old and you still have, you know, a couple of kids in the house, or your spouse, you know, what is the impact overall? I think you could probably make a pretty sound argument that it's still necessary. But at some point, you'll likely be self-insured. You're going to be retired. You probably don't need the policy any longer. You know, and then that's where you have to kind of put the pen to pad and say, does this make sense? Do we still need it? What is the cost of this to the benefit that I'll receive later down the road? And sometimes it's a cash flow issue. Permanent policies, I think, do certainly hold their place, but, you know, we want to mitigate risk. That's what we're really talking about right here. Not talking about for, you know, high net worth families for estate tax planning, or for, which we do like, being able to use these for, you know, distributions later in life from an accumulation factor. We are strictly today talking about how do you protect your family from if you're not there, essentially.
Right. And then last part, that do not resuscitate is very important. That DNR tells healthcare providers you don't want to be resuscitated, right? That physician's order for life-sustaining treatment will outline your end-of-life care, especially for an existing diagnosis. I was thinking about whether or not, I'm a big Elvis fan. I was thinking about whether Lisa Marie had that. She was only 53, and I'm thinking she probably had none of that, because they fought over the estate quite a bit. But I'm wondering if you know, you find out, like most movie stars, which is amazing, that have all this money and they should be doing this. Like everybody needs to do it, but you would think that they would be doing the right things, like Aretha Franklin and all that. You read all this stuff where life insurance would have come into play, all these different documents. But these are things that we need to do. Now, we're going to share with you in a little bit a document you can use to prepare for this, like a little bit of homework, a little soul searching, something that is one of my favorite things for the last 15 years. So we're going to talk about that in a bit. So these are the dead documents sort of that you need, and you should be looking at a board certified estate planning attorney to put them together for you.
That do not resuscitate, extremely important. Goes back to that advanced medical directives and, you know, what you want. Don't put the burden on your family. What about, this is one I think is very, very often overlooked.
Yeah.
What about digital assets? I mean, probably most of the time, and even with an estate plan, it's often overlooked, even with attorneys.
Gosh, I mean, listen, think about all the passwords, logins you have that could help your family, right? So the average person under 70 has like 200 digital accounts, like to get into their bank, investment, insurance. So there's digital vaults. I use a password manager called RoboForm. Danny does too. Keeps track of our logins and passwords. And those people that there's a password for it that I share with people that they know what it is. So, but we'll talk about some other services. But you got to think about those digital assets, and younger children, or younger adults. Man, they better think about it. So those instructions for digital assets, I saw like they sell, and I know they're for like older adults, but they sell password manager books. They're actually like notebooks, and you can write your passwords in. If that's what you have to do, fine. You just got to remember to update them, right? So that's like, I see that as a cool gift for holidays. Funeral instructions.
And let people know where they are, right?
Yeah, like here where all these documents are, right? And then funeral arrangements. It reduces that emotional burden to make the decision. Make them all. You want to be buried, cremated, where? I mean, I have clients that do everything, and I'm planning to do that too. I'm going to Tennessee, whether I'm alive or dead. So, it makes for a weird trip though with your girlfriend or your significant other. Why are we talking about this? But I'm just saying, you can make all these arrangements yourself and take care of it and just lay it out. Here's where I'm going to be. Here's the headstone. I have people that pick their headstone. They pick out, once they're in the process, and they don't want their kids involved. They do it all. It's so stress-free for people who are grieving over you that this is done. Heck, you can write your own obituary. I have clients.
I have clients. I think that I know you do too, where they create a binder. They'll keep it in their safe. They'll keep it maybe in a some place that they can store it safely, safe deposit box, or safe at home. They'll let other people know where it is, what it includes, and it has the first page is, if I pass, here's who you need to contact.
Right.
It has a love note to their spouse and maybe their kids or other loved ones. So they actually, it's a history of, hey, I love you. Here's the things that, it's really nice, right? I think that, it's comforting in some ways to have something like that done. But then it'll go through and say, it'll account for digital assets. Here's where we have assets. Here's an inventory of this. Here's how you get into them. And then all the way down to, I've seen people where the songs they want at their funeral, or, hey, I want a big party. Here's exactly what I want you to do. Here's who you need to contact. Here's where I'd like to have it. I mean, the more you have, the better experience it's going to be for your loved ones. And if you want that to be, and I think we all don't want to be a burden, I think that this is the way you do it.
I have a client. He's just a funny guy.
Yeah.
He's got a great, listen, I'm going to die. I love my parents. I love my family. I'm living life to the fullest, but he's got the whole thing, but he's got his daughter, or anybody who survives him, has his cell phone. And when the funeral is over, he's going to text everybody who's there from his phone, say, thanks for coming.
Hey, that's pretty slick.
That was great. So listen, once you get past that emotional hurdle of, hey, it's going to happen, look at death as life. That's what the Stoics did. They lived their lives better because they knew their demise was going to eventually happen. So they embraced it. And when they embraced that and did these things, their life was richer. I know it sounds weird, but that's how it works. So these are good things for you to do overall. So I find a lot of people have more fun with the funeral instructions and burial arrangements. The estate planning documents are boring and stuff, but people really like, what do I want? Where would I want to be? And, they look at it a little bit lighter, I think. Like, I would like my ashes spread here, So they, once they're at this stage, they've already gone through the whole thing. If they're picking music and all that, then they've fully embraced the whole thing. And their family will only have to be there and greet others and grieve and remember how great you are, as opposed to, you're such a pain in the ass, I had to do all this stuff. So that's important.
Yep, absolutely. So, Rich, what are some good resources people can look to maybe start the process? Just general stuff.
I love this 5 Wishes. I've been part of 5 Wishes for almost 2 decades. And it's a document at fivewishes.org. You purchase a document or you can complete this online. It's a booklet, and it covers your personal, spiritual, medical, and legal wishes all in one document. It's a document where you can put everything in. What would you want people to say about you in your funeral? What music would you want? Who would, and it goes through all the legal documentation in a flow, in a booklet. It's genius. In some states, actually, it's legal, not Texas. But there are some states where this is actually going to be your legal document. But it's important for you to go to fivewishes.org because Jim also puts, great information about the process. So this is a great document. It's very inexpensive to use. They're one of the organizations I would leave money to when I'm gone. They just do a great job. So really take a look at that. I think you'll find it very, very interesting, the whole process. But you take that booklet, it's very thin, and you start thinking, writing out. Now, some people want the digital version. I like the paper version only because I think it allows you to get more intimate with your thoughts. And then share with your executor where that document is and your children. So take a look at it. Let me know what you think. I think it's one of the best. Hospice Foundation. They're not just end-of-life grief, hospice care. They got great information about living with life-limiting illness and options for care and resources that the hub at the Hospice Foundation, you just Google them, they are really amazing. They're amazing people to begin with at hospice for my dad at home. And they helped me understand the death process. As he was dying, they helped me understand it because I was totally fraught with grief and watching him through this process, and they helped me understand it. So they are an amazing group. But I realized when I went to their website, gosh, Danny, they have like resources of tremendous resources for everybody on life-limiting illnesses. And then digital vaults. We talked about the vaults. Help you organize. And you go to After Vault is one of the biggest ones, right? And it's like $9.99 a month, $69 a year. But anything you want that's digital, then you can upload documents in this nice little vault and give your loved ones access to that vault. Very important. So After Vault is one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, so this is another way, though. So we talked about how some people may have a physical book. You can put a lot of this information right there, and it does store it online. It's protected. I know people sometimes are maybe a little hesitant about that. So I get it if you prefer the physical paper version, but make sure you're keeping it somewhere safe and sound and people know where to access it. And even with Digital Vault, you need to make sure people know that you have that. It does you no good if it's not communicated.
Well, I had one client that did this, Danny, and what he did was he loaded RoboForm onto his computer. Everybody's got access in his family to the password. When they log in, the password's already set up for everything he has along with his digital vault. And it works great for him.
Yep. Perfect. I think that's great. And I do like what you mentioned about hospice. I think so many times we think of hospice as like literally the end of days. And that's historically what it has been. But there's been a lot of advancement with that. And it's really broadened the scope and scale of what they do. My grandfather, who passed when he was 99, was on hospice for years. And it was really about, just helping him as he aged, become more comfortable. He was not able to take care and do a lot of things that he was able to do as he aged at an earlier age, obviously. But, these are things that are resources, not only just for your loved one who is actually physically going through it, but for the other people involved as well. I think that's a big element that people don't understand about hospice too. So don't hesitate to look into it. A lot of times somebody says, oh my gosh, they're on hospice. This is it. We've got to go see them. And sometimes that is the case, right? We see that too, where, it is the last week or their last days. But there are times that somebody's on hospice, and it doesn't mean that's the end of days, but certainly getting closer.
Danny, like your grandfather, right? He had a hospice for a long time. I have a client, dear client of mine. I love her. She's been with me for almost 30 years. She's on hospice care right now. She's not going to die anytime soon. She just needs help, and
Yeah.
she's at that end of life process, and they're incredibly helpful to her. So that's what I'm trying to say. Keep in mind that, like you said, I think when my dad passed away in '93, that's really what they were. But boy, they are really through the whole aging process and a lot of great resources. So take a look at them. So I think if you looked at 5 Wishes and Hospice, you'd really have a lot of information. I think that 5 Wishes document is a great gift to your friends or family who haven't done this yet. Because the booklets, it's
Yeah.
really, I think it's a good, like, hey, when you get a chance, take a look at this. I think it works. And it's like $5 a booklet. I mean, I'm telling you, it's not expensive. I've got some in
Yeah.
my
It's certainly
office. I bought like some for my office for clients when they come in. So, I mean, this is really great.
Yeah, I think so. So one thing we haven't addressed on here, Rich, is long-term care, and that's the elephant in many financial plans. Where it really disrupts that. But that's something that you need to be having the discussion surrounding as well. Is what happens if you are incapacitated? We talked about all the documents that you need, but who's going to take care of you? I mean, we talk about often, like for me right now, it's who's going to take care of my kids. Your spouse may take care of you, but what happens if your spouse is no longer here or you're not married? Those are things that need to be addressed and thought of as well. So when you're having these conversations about this stuff, you need to have the conversations about, hey, I'm still here. What do we do? Where do I go?
Right. And we prepare for that in financial plans. And we do it very pragmatically, because not everybody is going to wind up in a nursing home. And long-term care insurance, as you know, we know is a battlefield. So we'll have another presentation on long-term care that'll help you really narrow down what you need if you need long-term care insurance, whatever. And there's so many new strides coming. But yeah, it's something you prepare for, but that's more of a living component that should be part of your plan overall. But like you said, there's sort of the same, you're almost like on the same strata, right? With long-term care and this is like more here in the strata, and this is more toward here, right? So you're on the same wavelength. It's just where you are. We could spend a lot more time on that spectrum with long-term care versus end-of-life care.
Correct. So but it's something that while you're doing this, we have our own presentation on long-term care. But if you're addressing these, if you're sitting down in the holidays, have that conversation too. That should be brought up. It's certainly a part of it.
Yeah, I'm going to be alive, and what if I can't feed myself? It's a good conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
Really.
So this is one I really like, and I think that we don't do this well enough. I think people probably have a lot of things digitized on your phone. I know my wife looks at my phone. She's like, "Why do you have so many pictures that we don't have anywhere?" What happens? And so this is a pretty cool feature, I think, when you can digitize these things. And so you found a really good service that works well for this.
Legacy Box is great, but there are a lot of them. They'll take all your photos. I'm in the process of trying to put all this stuff together now. Like for Haley, my daughter, like her great grandfather, great great grandfather, me as a baby, and trying to get all these photographs and digitize them for her. And get rid of all these old photos, because they're just going to wind up in an antique store in Tomball. So I got to make sure that she's 25, she's digital. I want to make sure she's got that. And we did that with some of her videos when she was little, and I've had a chance to go through them, and they're priceless. I think I videotaped everything, because that's why we had to do it then when she was little. Oh my gosh. I think I had so many videos of everything. Even when she was very first born. She doesn't care to look at it, but I do. And someday she might have children. She wants to do that. So digitizing your memories, including any old VHSs and so forth, that's a good thing. It's a pain in the neck. I'm not going to disagree. You got to get it all together, all the photos. But Legacy Box sends you the kit, load everything into the kit, ship it off. Works great. That's one of the larger providers. There are a few others.
Yep. Yeah. There's plenty of places and resources with any of these resources that we just shared that you can find, but these are just a couple to kind of get the conversation started.
More prominent
do a little bit of homework.
Yeah, more prominent.
Yeah, see what works well for you.
I think 5 Wishes is fairly unique. But to your point, yeah, the digital vaults and yeah.
We are, number one, we are fiduciaries. We do see this. So we have to have no conflicts of interest, put clients' interests first. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You can always reach out to realinvestmentadvice.com, ask a question. We try to answer them all very timely. Lance actually typically jumps on right away. As many of you know, he does not sleep. He is a zombie in some ways.
He needs sleep.
Or a machine, a robot. And we have quite a few certified financial planners on staff. We do take our jobs very seriously, and the thing that we're tasked with is taking care of our clients and making sure that you guys are educated. You have a very good understanding as far as what's going on, legal legislation changes, and we want to make sure that we continue to provide you guys with up-to-date information. So you guys have a topic you'd like for us to address, please don't hesitate to let us know. If it's something that we don't within our daily shows, our newsletters, or Rich and I do these once a month or give or take, just to kind of address clients' concerns and needs, and bring up things that you guys need to be thinking of. We are also going to provide a survey at the end of this. We're going to answer some questions, so we're not done. So don't jump off yet. But please take the survey at the end if you'd like for an advisor to reach out to you. If you have more specific questions, happy to address through that as well. And then that's another great place you can put in if you have something else you'd like us to cover from a topic perspective, or just general questions in general. But want to get to some questions here now. And so a couple good ones, Rich, and we're going to switch gears here just a moment.
While you're doing that, November, we're gonna have a Medicare presentation in October. November, we're gonna do something different called Talk Turkey on a can of coffee, where it's all the stuff that you're really annoyed with financially. So we want your feedback for this one, because we're going to talk turkey as fiduciaries. We're not brokers, right? We're not here to break anything. We are fiduciaries. So we're just here to answer the information objectively. So anything that's been pissing you off financially, issues you see, we want to talk about. So we're going to keep it like a really cool open forum, little presentation, but that's November. We'll keep you posted on that. So what's the question?
And in October here, actually in about 2 weeks, we're going to do one on Medicare. So we do have open enrollment. It's a topic that we cover several times throughout the year. I think we covered it back in May, but we're going to address it again because open enrollment starts October 15th, goes through December. So want to make sure that, you guys are armed with enough information, because we know the alphabet soup can be a little bit overwhelming. And it may not be that you are at Medicare age, but maybe you have somebody that you help look at that. And so just to give you some timely advice, because it is the season. So, Rich.
It's Medicare season. It used to be Christmas and Thanksgiving. Now it's Medicare season. Yeah.
Yeah, it is Medicare season. Well, I mean, it's been Halloween for like 2 months already. So, I know you're prepared.
I was out.
You have the.
I was out this morning at 6:30 because I'm beating the dude across the street this year. I'm ticked off at him. Is
your cemetery set up with your skeletons outside?
Not yet. I'm ready. It's war.
Okay.
It's war. Go ahead.
All right. Perfect. So talk a little bit about, probate. What's the process? How long does something like that typically take? And maybe some ways to avoid that.
So it depends on the state, right? So Texas's probate seems more seamless. It'll be a percentage of your total estate as far as what it's going to cost, and it's a court process, right? It's settlement of the will and so forth. I have clients in northeastern states that I implore them to do what we call a revocable living trust, because probate in New York City is like everything else in New York City, and I don't have to go any further than that. So the revocable living trust is a way for you to avoid the probate process. Because probate, once everything's through probate, everybody can see what you're doing. Like, when you want to see how a star allocated money, whatever, and they had a will, it's in the court. Once it's in the court, it's done. Everybody sees it. Revocable living trust is really an extension of you. It uses your social security number, and it allows for the passing of assets without probate. Now, there is something called a pour over will because you have to title things as the revocable living trust. So the pour over will capture things that you have not titled. Now, we'll tell you in Texas, I don't know. The probate process is pretty easy. Maybe it's about what? 2% of your estate, 3% of your estate. It's just that it takes a while to get the money. So I have clients that will do revocable living trust, Danny, one for the privacy. They really don't want anyone else to know what's going on. Two, to avoid the probate process overall, even though it doesn't take that long here. Now, I will tell you, during COVID, probate around the country was terrible. So clients...
And there's still backup right now.
There's still backup.
I have a client trying to probate a will in New York as we speak, and it's taken over a year still.
Oh, a year. If it takes less than 2 years, I'd be shocked.
Yeah. So there's a couple easy ways that you can avoid some of these things, right? Just beneficiaries on your accounts. That's a great way to do it. All you need, death certificate. So nothing has to be probated. You walk into your financial institution or you call whoever you have. They start working on the process. That is the quickest, easiest way to address that. Having a trust. I think that, Rich, how many people come to you and say, I need a trust, but they don't know why? Maybe it's
they have no idea. They have no idea.
Their kids said they need one, and a trust can be good in a lot of ways. But I think one big misconception about the trust is that, it's going to make life a lot easier. Sometimes I see the attorneys say that, hey, you have to have this trust. Well, okay, who's going to be the trustee? Do you really need the trust? Do you want to dictate how funds are used after your passing? Now, these can be really good and we hear this quite a bit, you have 2 or 3 children and one is not very good with funds, and you don't want them to get the funds and just go blow it on a shiny yellow Corvette. That can be where, hey, we're going to have a trust set up where they can take a certain amount each year, or they can only use it for health, education, maintenance, and support. We see that quite a bit. You can put in very strict stipulations within this where it allows you to say, hey, you have to, I've seen it where you have to undergo a drug test at the trustees, at their discretion. I've seen, a lot of things in there that can be good. And the idea is to protect the funds, but also protect your loved ones from not making poor decisions. And hopefully, we talk about generational wealth. And while you may say, well, I don't necessarily have generational wealth that, millions and millions of dollars, but, do you want those funds squandered? Do you want to protect them in the event of a divorce of one of your loved ones? Do you want them to go potentially to the next generation, regardless of how much they are? I think it's really important. So they can be a very useful tool, but just know why.
Well, just like you said, Danny, trust gets sold to people. They may not need a trust. Now, the first thing, go back to the conversation about avoiding probate. You can also remember, we're all taking into account that maybe you don't hit the estate tax exemptions, which are pretty hefty, but you can also do transfer on death, where you add a beneficiary even to a non-IRA, non-tax retirement account. Like you go to your bank and say, listen, this is my account, but if I die, I want my kids to get it without probate. Okay, that's called transfer on death. There's a form for that. And you can do that, right? The revocable living trust we talked about. Now, to your point, testamentary trusts are very popular in Texas. And I don't think to your point, it doesn't have to do with how much money you have. It's what you want to do with the protection of that money. I have clients that we set up testamentary trust for, and they have passed. Their children have those trusts. Those children, some of them are getting divorced. And they'll call me and they'll go, Rich, thank goodness you talked to my dad about doing this, because this asset cannot be part of the divorce proceeding. This trust is protected. So if you feel that, heck, whatever money you have stays within your lineage and it can't be attached by creditors and so forth, then out of your will spawns a testamentary trust for your children.
So explain that really quickly on what that looks like. So that's a trust that you're creating now, but it's within your will that is actually created upon your passing. It has that pour over provision. So the assets pour over into those trusts, and then they are dictated and moved to the heirs as
in my will, Haley's the trustee of testamentary trust. The trust blossoms, right? I'm gone. The money goes into this. If she should keep it in the trust, right? It'll be the Haley Rosso trust, right? Whatever. Now she can give that money away. I mean, But if it stays within that protective barrier, and she gets married and or divorced, they can't touch that. Now, if she passes in there, she'll have successors, children, charities, then that money would go to them. And see, that could stay within the family, but it protects them from outside sources. So if you want to protect your family from outside sources that could attack those funds, that's where the testamentary trust can come in. And again, there are so many great trusts out there. We should have like Chris Masters come do a workshop with us and talk about, defective grantor trusts and, all the different types of trusts that are more sophisticated from an estate planning perspective. But they could be very effective, especially for business owners. If you own a business and you're liquidating assets. So, that's a really sophisticated estate planning. We used to do a lot of estate planning in the 90s when the estate tax exemptions were very small, and we had to preserve the husband and wife's exemption and make sure that they were both using those. So we don't see that as much, but Danny, you and I talk about taxes all the time. And I am really afraid that death taxes get on board again and they will lower those exemptions. So, with the
I think there's no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to get talked about a lot, but I think the worse we get financially in the country, the more this stuff is going to start creeping up. And so that's where sophisticated estate planning is required from a trust perspective. They can be very, very effective, but you got to understand them. You got to adhere to the rules and do the right things with them and know the right ones to get.
Well, you also have to understand and have that conversation about who's the trustee. So like if I pass, Michelle is the trustee over this, but if we both pass, Rich is the trustee, and then there's a successor behind him. If Rich is no longer here, get out of here. But you want somebody also who's going to be able to educate your children on the general, process and make sure they have a good understanding. Like, so sometimes you may say, well, you can become co-trustee at 30, and then at 35 or 40, you can become trustee over the funds, but you want them to mature a little bit. You want them to have some life experience, and then obviously work with somebody who can bring them into the fold of, hey, here's how we're investing. Here's why. Here's what the funds are doing. Here's how we work with the attorneys. Here's how we work with the CPA. And so they're not just going into it blind. And I think that
that's want Lance's trust though, for his kids. You don't want to be in there.
No.
I think there's all kinds of, like, before you get that money, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things that have to happen.
Yeah, you can get $1 a day if you, I wouldn't even want to see what that looks like. So, make sure all these documents are updated. I think it's extremely valuable and important. A couple more questions going to try to address here. So this is a good one, I think, is that talk about capital gains tax on stocks. And this is interesting. This is going to be different for everybody. And I understand why the question was asked today, because you may have somebody that's held a stock, and especially, we have prior generations, especially the ones that are older right now, baby boomers and older, they bought things and maybe never sold them. And they have a very large capital gain on something, and they may be very close to the end of life. Yeah. And there is a step up in cost basis. Right. But you could avoid that. Now, you also have to understand the risk that you hold, especially if it's a concentrated position. But you could avoid that with that step up in cost basis where you don't have to pay that capital gain, which could be very worthwhile.
So I have that dear client. I have a client that has a huge position in Apple. She bought Apple at like $5 a share or something insane. So you can imagine, and I think she bought like $75,000 worth of it at that point. So you can imagine what it's worth. Now she's closer to end of life. I've got children I got to worry about. That there's a huge step up in cost basis. So there's few ways that we do this. One, I do trim. So this is an art versus a science. I hate to say this, but it is. And a lot of financial planning and working with money is art as well as science. So we trim off surgically at long-term capital gains some. We gift some because there's a gift tax exemption, right? But the children now will inherit her cost basis. So it's not as tax efficient, but they're going to hold that Apple stock. So that's okay. So we're trying to keep that position as intact as possible. And like you said, there's a risk there. There's a risk. If Apple stock loses 30%, she'd still be okay, but there is a risk. So there's this judgment call because of that step up in basis. So we're managing that position in a lot of different ways, peeling some money off for her long-term care, gifting some to the children while they're here, and keeping the rest to pass to them at the step up. So we have a sort of a three-pronged approach and we also spend the dividend. We don't reinvest. We don't buy any more. So there's a multiple ways we're approaching that position, which has done amazing for her. But we see that in Texas a lot, right? With Exxon and other things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you could gift that stock if you're charitably inclined. There's lots of ways to do that. You
charitable.
Can put it into if the organization doesn't take stock, you could put it into a donor advised fund. And then from there, they could liquidate, move the funds over. There's a lot of ways to address that. We do see that with people who have large liquidity events or just large capital gains, and they are charitably inclined. Yes. Lots of ways to do that. RMD age, ways to gift the required minimum distribution without paying taxes on it.
We donate her full required minimum distribution every year. That's great. That's called a QCD. Qualified charitable distribution. If you're at RMD age, you can gift as a charitable donation, and that really helps.
Up to $100,000.
To $100,000, right?
So another question, kind of piggybacked on that. So let's say that somebody passes, and when the question was, when will the custodian, like Fidelity or Vanguard or whoever it may be, when will they contact the beneficiaries? And so typically they don't contact the beneficiaries. The executor contacts Fidelity, and they say, okay, here's who the beneficiaries are, and then they start that process.
Right.
And so you will have to fill out forms, especially if it's an IRA. You have to set up an inherited IRA, then you can move it to your custodian or wherever you want from that point. But they're very versed at this. It happens quite a bit. Unfortunately, we have a lot of experience with this, just doing this business as long as we have. And so it's probably easier than you think in many ways. There are some places that make you jump through some hoops, but in general, not nearly as bad as most people think.
Fidelity just wants the documents. They're going to connect. They're going to look at, okay, yeah, Danny is the beneficiary. Erica's the beneficiary. We need this. We need the death certificate, and here are new forms. That's pretty much what so they're just using that information to lock it up with what you're providing, which is important why you keep your beneficiaries updated. Because they'll say, well, Jim is your beneficiary and Joe is your beneficiary, not Bill. Where'd Bill come from? Bill's not on here. So keep your beneficiaries updated.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So a couple more questions here. So talk a little bit about the PLST form. And so essentially this form is the form that you would use for end of life, or as you are going towards end of life. And so a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. Now, I think the difficult thing with this form is essentially that when you need care, you may not be in the state of mind to provide that document. And so really this is, this may be going a little bit further where, hey, I don't want to take this medication. I don't want to have this type of surgery, whereas end of life is going to be typically a little bit different on that. So, things to consider. Some states may not look at that the same way as others. It does need to be a legal binding document signed, typically notarized is even better. But you have to have that as you're going into care, and sometimes that's just not always the case.
I'm not downloading anything. I'm not downloading anything. I'm going to my estate planning attorney. I see people go and search the internet, and I can bypass the attorney and do this document. Unless you go to our website, we have Trust and Will, which are for I think, and they also do trust, but for basics, I'm not downloading anything. I see these documents, and I'm like, boy, I let a lot of people,
Well, how many times does somebody, say, well, I'm not spending that money on an attorney, and then they go and they try to piecemeal all this together, and sometimes it's not done correctly, it's not executed. Correct. The benefit of an attorney will be is that they will walk you through what you need, what you don't need. They typically will keep a a copy of it as well. So, you know, your loved ones could reach out. Hey, I can't find the will. What do you have? And so I think that that's invaluable.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
if you're worried about the money now, think about the money later, how much it costs, because when these are not done properly, we are talking about thousands and thousands of dollars to get this done. Or things aren't done to the way that you hoped. And now it's going to be up to the state to determine how your assets are going to be broken down. I mean, there's a lot of issues surrounding this. So I'm one where I prefer to pay somebody to make sure it's done properly. And then, you know, it makes life easier. You know exactly what's going to be done. And yeah, it costs a little bit up front and it hurts a little bit to write that check maybe, but your funds will actually typically go much longer and further if you do it right.
Right. It's so important. And you brought up a very good point, Danny. You went past it, but you brought it up and very good. You got to be in your right mind. You got to be cogent to do these. A lot of people scramble to do these when there's something's already happened. These got to be done when you are healthy, in your right mind, and not when you're at the point where, oh gosh, does she even know? I mean, no, now. So important. People usually use that as the trigger to do something when something bad has already happened, and that's almost in some cases too late. You got to do it when you're in your right mind and can think these things through.
Yep. So jumping.
And then some attorneys, Julie just said, some attorneys will say we didn't need the PLOST. We can do just the DNR. You know, your attorney is going to know best. We're providing every document to you that you should need, but there are going to be some that will cover some of the others. And see, that's where a good attorney comes into play.
Yeah, I think more likely than not, most people are going to use a DNR. Is what you're typically going to see. Yeah. All right. Do we provide or do we help clients with trust? We are not attorneys. We don't set trust up. We will, you know, visit with your attorney with you if necessary, or give you some ideas and things that you need to talk to your attorney about, just in general discussion. Hey, here's the reason why we're thinking about this. Is this necessary? They may say yes, no, or I would do it a different way. That's always the beauty of visiting with, you know, having multiple people kind of on your side to make sure your interests are met. So we don't write them. We certainly can help implement them. So, you know, we have clients that may have funds held in individual accounts or making sure. And here's one big thing, Rich. I see a lot of people that go through the process, but they never update beneficiaries to have the trust. They never move the funds into the actual trust or family limited partnership or whatever it may be. And so that's a really expensive paperweight if you guys don't execute these documents and do it right.
It is. Because it's a pain in the neck. Listen, if you do a revocable living trust, you got to update your brokerage accounts. You have to update your IRAs. You got to update your deed to your house. You got to update everything. Now, your attorney gives you a list of saying, here's what you need to do. And then you look at this list and go, oh, goodness. When am I going to get to this? But yeah, agree. Once you get all the documents done, you're not done. You may have to
they usually a really good attorney will also give you kind of a playbook and say, okay, here's how you execute this.
Absolutely.
This is what you need to do. And listen, if you're my client, you're on here, you're Rich's, or you work with us, if you bring that to us, we are, for what we're helping manage, and any advisor for the most part should be able to do this, is that they say, okay, well, let's go update this. We've got to change this. We need to open a new account and move funds over to this. And so we take a lot of that burden off of you. And so keep that in mind when you're doing that. You're not alone. You've got somebody who can help kind of navigate all that. I know it seems overwhelming. We can typically help you with that and make it pretty easy to do. We talked a bit about this, but talk a little bit about identity theft protection and home title theft monitoring. So I think that kind of plays into all of this a little bit.
You know what? I've been looking to research this stuff because you hear about it all the time. If that's really a crime, I think it is. I've been thinking about doing a candid coffee on it, but I just started doing my homework, so it's not fair for me to give you an answer on it. You see these services that charge that, but as soon as people start charging for stuff, I'm already skeptical. Like, I think it's important, obviously, for identity theft and LifeLock sometimes and all that, and security is very important. But someone's also trying to sell you something. So I hear the ads. I logically can put it together, but have not fully done my homework on these things.
Well, and so
it's on my list.
I'll address that a little bit. There's there's lifelock.com. There are plenty of services that will help you do that. There's Legal Shield that will help you get in and monitor and protect.
I don't know about the whole, I'm just not familiar with the whole title.
Correct.
The other stuff I get, Legal Shield and all that.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times, so and I'm not talking about the title per se here, but I'm just talking about general identity theft protection.
Yeah.
And a lot of your credit card companies will now actually offer that service. So your bank may already do some of that for you. But everybody should be going and updating, looking at freeannualcreditreport.com each and every year. You can go through the 3 different ones and get a free report each year. But many of those companies will already provide that for you.
I will tell you, you probably see this a lot with your older parents. And I feel, and I deal with it through a lot of other clients, older parents. They click on links. Stop clicking on links. They read all that bombastic stuff and they click on it. Don't click on anything. Tell your parents, don't click on anything. They don't update their security software or their systems. They never go in and there's an update to your Norton antivirus. They don't do it. So there are certain things that I see older people do that creates this problem for themselves that needs to be direct. It needs to be, all that clickbait when they get emails that say the world's coming to an end. Click here. And most people don't click. But for some reason, I got older clients that's like a donut. And they click. Don't click. That's the first thing I tell them. Don't click on anything. Send it to me.
Yeah, I get emails from institutions. I don't even have money yet. And it'd be like, oh, click here to update your contact information. And then you look, like I got one from Bank of America the other day, and it looked like it was legit, but there was no E in America.
Yeah, check the email address. Erica said that. That's what I do. I look up at the email address and I see some funky stuff in there. Like yesterday, I got one that looked really real. Like I even sent it to Connie. I said, this looks so real, but this is spam. But it was from like Honky Donkey. Like that was I was looking at the email, but I said, let me look at the email address it's coming from. And it was funky, right? So that's right. Check where the email's coming from. That's so important. Honky Donkey. I'll give it to you, Honky Donkey. Right to the spam folder.
That's right. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
A lot of great questions here. If you think it's something we didn't address, let us know.
Yes.
Go take the survey, please, at the end of this. It'll take you just a couple minutes. Let us know how we're doing. If you'd like to hear more, something we can improve on, we're always looking for constructive criticism, please. If you'd like somebody to reach out from RIA, we'd be happy to do so. Let us know in the survey. Or, go to realinvestmentadvice.com if you have not checked that out. And go to the YouTube channel, The Real Investment Show. Please subscribe. Tell your friends if you like what we're doing, what we're providing, the information. Help us educate other people and give this information to them as well. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and we will see you guys on October 12th for our Medicare Lunch and Learn. So thank you guys. Y'all have a good one.